So let's talk about buyer expectations and the fallout on buyer appointments. I think probably the biggest opportunity for most agents that we talk to is they haven't properly communicated to the buyer why the buyer should meet with them to begin with. So if we could agree that the buyer's perspective initially is that your job is to meet them at a house and open a door, there's very little loyalty to you in that situation. Would you agree with that? Okay, so the way that we would coach people on this is, and I'm going to go really hard line with you on this, I don't think there's any reason ever, period, full stop, you should meet a buyer at a house for the first time. Now, aside from the fact that it's not safe to do that, it's just, you just don't know if it's a great use of your time. You don't know if they're qualified, you don't know if they're motivated, you don't know if they're crazy. There's so many things that you don't know. Now, you all have a decision to make in your business whether you're going to draw a hard line there or not. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just saying that if it were me, I'd draw a hard line there. So if that's the hard line, then what are we closing for? Well, we're closing for an in-person buyer consultation. And that's at your office, that's at Starbucks, that's at Panera. It doesn't matter to me where it is geographically, as long as it's a public place and it's a consult, not let me run out and open this door for you. Okay, so if you're setting that for a buyer consult, we have to determine for the buyer what the benefit is for them. So here's the way you might do this. I'm going to give you a script. You might write this down. Let me first ask you a question, because I don't know the exact numbers in your market. How many, big number, all across your MLS, how many active homes are there on the market right now? 5,200. Okay. All right. So here's your script. You're talking to this buyer prospect, and you say, Mr. Buyer Prospect, are you aware that there are currently 5,200 homes for sale in the greater Charleston area? And they're likely going to say, no, I didn't know that. And then you're going to say, if I could show you a way to narrow that list from 5,200 to the 10 best for you in 30 minutes or less, would that be a great use of your time? The vast majority of time they're going to say yes to that without even knowing what they just said yes to. Now, what they just said yes to is meeting with you in person to do a buyer consultation. I'll give you the quick sort of bullet point tactics of that in just a second. Yet this is one of those things where their perspective is that in order for them to be able to figure out what house they want, they have to go start looking at houses. And what we know is they don't have to physically go see the house in order to be able to go from 5,200 to 1. We can go from 5,200 to like 8 with a computer. And then we can go from 8 to 1 in person. And they're thinking, I kind of did some research. Here's what I think might work. Start showing me houses. And then you set yourself up, if you're not careful. We've all done this before. I don't know about you. I've done this before in the early days where I get a buyer, I'm excited about it, they're nice, they're legit, and I don't use some sort of process to filter it, and 42 houses later, I'm still running all over the place. Stab me in the eye right now. Yeah. Okay, so any questions on the script? And then let's talk about how we do that. So they come in and you meet them at your office or at Starbucks or whatever, and chime in any time along the way here. What we like to do, after you build some rapport, kind of get to know them, let's assume that it's Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. We're going to take 2 blank pieces of paper, just like computer paper. And we're going to slide those lists in front of Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. And we're going to ask them to create a numbered list 1 through 5. So we call this the 5++. So numbered list 1 through 5. And we're going to say, now, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, right now, I don't want you to talk to each other about the answers to these questions. We'll have a chance to do that in just a second. For now, I'd like for you to each write the top 5 things that are must-haves for you in your next home. And they're going to work on it, and you can have a little fun with this. They'll look at each other, look on each other's paper. You're like, no, not yet, not yet. Keep them focused on their paper. So they come up with their top 5. Give them however much time they need to do that. And then under number 5, you ask them to put a plus. And then your next question is if there's just one more thing that your next home could have that would make it a 5+, notice it's not a 6, a 5+ home, what would that be? And they write that down. They're still not talking to each other yet. Then you say, under that plus, put one more plus, please. If there was just one more thing that would make that next home a 5++, what would that be? And they're going to write it down. So now you have Mr. and Mrs. 5++ list. Now you introduce a third blank piece of paper, and I'm belaboring a point here intentionally, like white, blank, no lines, no nothing. Just blank canvas. Put the third piece of paper, and now this is their compromised 5++ list. And they can spar at the table all they need to right now to come up with the compromised 5++ list. Because how many of you, like us, have ever had someone, in this case, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, they're standing in the house and you know it's the right house for them and they can't reach a decision? Because she hoped one thing was a little different or he hoped another thing was a little different. Now they got to go home and talk about it and think about it and pray about it and talk to their mama about it and whatever else. We're going to eliminate all of that right now with the 5++ list.